Then in Sports Central, we go for a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 13 matchup between the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Nebraska Cornhuskers. Huge rivalry matchup coming up here in Week 13. You got Iowa. This team just won the Big Ten West last week, looking for their 10th win of the season in this matchup as they take on Nebraska, a team that's 5-6 on the season, 1 win away from bowl eligibility, and this would be their first bowl game since 2016. We'll be going for a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started with your team trends. Iowa beat Illinois last week 15-13. Another low-scoring win for Iowa. That's kind of been the MO for Iowa this season, is winning it in close, low-scoring games. This offense is pretty terrible, for being honest, but it's just the defense that has found a way for the Hawks in most of their games this season. This team is 9-2, 6-2 in conference, and this team once again has clinched the Big Ten West. So this matchup doesn't mean quite as much for Iowa, as they're headed to Indianapolis next week to take on either Michigan or Ohio State. But as for Nebraska, lost to Wisconsin 17-24 in overtime. Another brutal loss for Nebraska. This team down the stretch has had multiple close games, and it's kind of the same story as the past few years with Nebraska. The close, brutal losses this team has taken. And I mean, this was a 5-3 team heading into November, and suddenly now this team is 5-6 and still trying to get that 6th win. So at this point for Nebraska, a critical matchup for them, as if they can win this matchup, they get to a bowl game for the first time in a while. Games be on Friday the 24th, so a Black Friday matchup in Lincoln. Kickoff is 11 a.m. Central. Spread's going Nebraska here by 2.5. So despite Nebraska being the worst team record-wise, 4 less wins than Iowa, they're still a favorite in this matchup by 2.5. Over-under is 26.5. I believe that has since shifted to 25.5. That is the lowest over-under, I think, in history of all time, which Iowa's set that record multiple times this season, and this is the lowest one of them all. I mean, seeing an over-under below 40 in itself is pretty low, but under 30 and where it is for this matchup is pretty insane. FPI is going Iowa 61% as well. Nebraska leads the series 30-20. Nebraska won the last matchup in Iowa City, but Iowa has won 8 of the past 10. Your stat comparison. And here you go. Iowa's a team that is just terrible offensively. Look at, I mean, they're 118th in points per game, 130th in pass yards a game. Obviously, Cade McNamara going out didn't help anything. And Deacon Hill has been in since, well, he's been the primary starter since. And he hasn't been terribly impressive. 800 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, 5 picks. So not a very strong passing team. And even the rushing game, not super strong for this team. LaShawn Williams, the lead in rushing. But either way, this is still the 102nd ranked rushing game in the country. But the defense, that's really where this team shines. That's really where both teams shine. Iowa's 3rd in points allowed this season, pass defense 9th, rush defense 17th. All around, this is a brutal defense that has really won this game most of their games, or won this team most of their games this season. And as for Nebraska, 116th in points per game, 16th in points allowed. This team does not have a very good passing game, 129th in pass yards a game, and the quarterback situation has been a mess for Nebraska this year. That's really been the main issue. Obviously, after Casey Thompson left, if Casey Thompson was around for Nebraska, this team would probably be, I'd say, anywhere between 8 and 10 wins at this current point, probably 9, or I'd say 9 wins at this current point, and they'd probably be a heavy favorite in this matchup. It's just a shame that he was pretty much forced out of this program for Jeff Sims, who has been a total disaster for the Cornhuskers when he's played this year. But you look at the defense for Nebraska, 51st in pass yards, 6th or against rushing. So this is a strong rush defense here with Nebraska. Passing defense, not quite as strong, but overall, this is still a brutal defense that has been one of the best in the country this season. Your recent matchups, Iowa beat Illinois 15-13, shut out Rutgers 22-0. That was an impressive win there. Probably the best win of the season this team has had. They also beat Northwestern 10-7. Lost to Minnesota 12-10, but that was kind of a controversial ending there that the Hawks could have won, and then beat Wisconsin 15-6. So you can kind of see the common theme here for Iowa. This team finds a way to win games by scoring 10-20 somewhere in there. They typically find a way, and their defense is brutal. As for Nebraska, lost to Wisconsin by a touchdown, lost to Maryland by 3, lost to Michigan State by 3. 3 really brutal losses down the stretch. Honestly, all 3 of those games could be wins for this team. They've given themselves opportunities to win, and honestly, at this point, Nebraska, they could have found a way in each of those games, which they definitely could have. And even the Minnesota game, when you think back to week 1, this is a team that could be, once again, very much an 8 or 9 win team at this current point. It's just those close games. But before that, beat Purdue 31-14, also beat Northwestern 17-9. Turns out Northwestern this season has been decent, getting up to 6 wins. Key points, Iowa 9-2. This defense is brutal. Their offense is terrible. I mean, that's in short. That's how you describe Iowa this season. And I mean, obviously, it didn't help anything when Cade McNamara got injured, but this team finds ways to win games. I feel like you got two very opposite teams when it comes to close games. Nebraska finds ways to lose games. Iowa finds ways to win games, and that's really what it's come down to down the stretch here. But another really crazy stat for Iowa. This team has won 5 games by only scoring 20 or less. That is something that you'll never see in college football typically, but Iowa's found to win low-scoring games this season, and the defense has really shined, and that's really for both teams. Defensively, both teams have been strong this season. But I will say for Nebraska as well, this team matches up well against the Hawkeyes defensively. This is a really strong rush defense. Iowa's going to have to pass the ball in this matchup, and they're going to have to rely on Deacon Hill to make a big play or two if this team wants a chance, if the Hawks want a chance to win. So for Nebraska, I mean, Deacon Hill, if they can put some pressure on him, make sure that he is uncomfortable all game, guaranteeing Nebraska's actually got a pretty good shot to win this matchup. But for Nebraska, the 4 brutal close losses, I mean, this is a huge game for the Huskers as well. I mean, this team hasn't been to a bowl game since, 2016? It's been 7 years since Nebraska's been to a bowl game. And honestly, I feel like over the years, this team has had teams that are very much talented enough and worthy enough to get up to 6 wins. It's just been this team just really struggles in those close matchups. So it's about finding a way in the end, and Nebraska's going to have a test here to see if they can do that. It looks like Chuba Purdy is going to be the starter at quarterback as well, which he started against Wisconsin last week, played pretty well for the Huskers as well. And when you consider the quarterback situation, which has been an issue for Nebraska this season, if they had a halfway decent quarterback this year, once again, I feel like this team would be right around 8 or 9 wins right now. They'd probably win the Big Ten West as well, and that's once again why it's so tough not having Casey Thompson in there, a quarterback that played pretty well for this team last season, and instead having Jeff Sims, who's been a turnover machine. So, I mean, for Nebraska, having Chuba Purdy in there, if he can, turnovers are going to be huge as well. Whoever wins the turnover margin should definitely win this matchup. I really do think that. But with that, let's get the prediction here for Iowa and Nebraska coming up here in Week 13. A huge matchup for both teams. I would say especially for Nebraska here. And with that, I'm going to take the Huskers 10-6 in this matchup. I think this is the lowest scoring prediction I've ever had before. And honestly, I mean, the over-under's at 25.5. I would take the under on that all day as of right now. I've only got 16 total points in this matchup. Nebraska's going to win it. And I feel like the way Nebraska matches up defensively, Iowa's going to have to pass the ball. They're not going to be able to run it very well against Nebraska, one of the better rushing defenses in the country. So, and I just don't trust Deacon Hill to be able to score very much on this Nebraska team. I think that the Huskers as well defensively, that's really where Nebraska needs to shine here. If they give up more than, I would say, 15 points, the Huskers do, Iowa's pretty much got to win here. If Iowa gets to 10 or 15, it's going to look pretty dim, I think, for Nebraska, just because this offense has struggled in many games this season. But I will say this as well. Nebraska's kind of got a new momentum, I think, with having Chuba Purdy as well. Purdy played pretty well last week for Nebraska. And with having him in there, once again, I think Nebraska's got a higher ceiling offensively now. So I actually think I'm pretty confident taking Nebraska here 10-6. I think they find a way. They match up well. I mean, there's obviously a lot on the line here for Nebraska as well, having a bowl game potentially in the distance. But over under 25.5, I'm taking the under and Nebraska to cover the spread in the end. I think Nebraska's defense shines. They get the win in the end. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.